Pradeep, welcome to ADB on the ground.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Sure. So I was listening to Monica's presentation earlier, and I was really inspired about what Costa Rica is doing. Is there a version of that happening in Asia, in your estimate?
Yeah, I think there are probably more than one example of that happening in some way, shape, or form. I think everybody knows about the sort of clean energy revolution that's happening in China at the large scale. We also talk about things that are happening in Singapore, in a much more complex and concise way in a city-state. But I think I'd like to highlight Thailand as a very good example of a country in the region that is really trying to enable clean energy development all across the supply chain. Be it generation, be it improved transmission and distribution, be it decentralized generation, such as using the solar rooftops. And they're also now exploring electric mobility.
I see. Seems like a natural progression if you think about it.
I would think so. I think they went through a couple of fairly painful transitions during the oil shocks, oil price shocks, and that gave them the incentive to put in place some long-term plans. For instance, they set up the ENCON fund, the Energy Conservation Fund, which was actually supported by the oil fund. So they had a surcharge on oil. And with that, they spawned a series of renewable energy investments and energy efficiency investments that are now beginning to bear fruit.
I see. Well, that leads me to a sub-question. Like, what is it with Thailand that makes it such a leader? And you mentioned that, they have that history of the oil shocks. I mean, what else is in place in Thailand that maybe other countries can try to aspire to have or adopt?
I think similar to Costa Rica, Thailand has, it's blessed with a very large endowment of renewable energy. Okay, so it's got a lot of hydro power, it's got a fair amount of wind energy resources, it's got plenty of solar energy resources, and being a large agricultural country, it has a lot of biomass. And so they've managed to tap into into their own existing endowment. So that's one thing. The second thing I think is that they've had a progressive government that has consistently looked out for clean energy opportunities. They've got an alternative energy development plan in place now that calls for fairly high penetration of renewable energy in the grid. And I think that the third important aspect is they've got a fairly organized and aware civil society network, and frankly, one would even say activist citizenry, which has been clear that they do not want to see fossil fuel deployment within the country. There has been a lot of debate and discussion in the national press and media about a couple of coal-fired power plants in the south of the country that have been planned. Citizens obviously have had lots of questions about it, and the proponents of the project have had to go back and actually redo their environmental impact assessments and do it over again, and have been asked to sort of justify why this would be the preferred approach rather than renewable energy options. So I think it's a combination of having a very high resource endowment, progressive policies, and a government that is focused on clean energy, and an aware and active citizenry.
Cool. Just my last question. One of the big words being thrown around earlier was decarbonization. And obviously, Thailand is quite progressive when it comes to their thinking about decarbonization. What about the other countries in your experience? Where is Asia at?
I think all Asian governments have decarbonization targets as part of the Paris Declaration. But I think policymakers in these countries and administrators, I think they approach decarbonization more through the lens of local air pollution and the challenges of urbanization. Air quality, they understand that. That is a real problem today. They are battling it. Waste management, they get that. Issues around noise pollution, managing water quality in their urban areas and peri-urban areas, they get that. So that is how they're actually approaching this issue. And then larger scale decarbonization is really a core benefit coming out of this local air pollution approach.
Okay.
And there you can see there is a lot of emphasis on improved public transport. Asian cities are investing en masse in MRT, mass rapid transit. They're looking at bus rapid transit. They're looking at electric vehicles. They're looking at integrating, different modes of transportation. They're talking about energy efficient buildings. They're talking about rooftop power generation through solar PV technology. So all that is about really urbanization and managing that process. And in that process, they're also going to be benefiting the global climate change regime.
Excellent. Well, thank you for your thoughts, Pradeep.
Thank you.